Spinosaurus was a large spinosaurid that lived in North Africa in the late Cretaceous period. It went extinct 90 million years ago from likely climate change, rising water levels, which destroyed the environment that these animals lived in. But what if these creatures didn't go extinct? What if some adapted to the environmental change? What if Spinosaurus evolved? Before we find out what Spinosaurus could evolve into, we first have to know what it was to begin with. And that is a difficult thing to figure out. Spinosaurus is such a strange and heavily debated animal. We don't understand it very well at all. We currently have it as a giant, short-legged, semi-aquatic fish eater. It's unknown how they hunted fish. The two most likely options are either wading near rivers and snapping up large fish off to land, or going into the water and diving after prey. Either way, those large jaws were used to eat fish, so that will likely be a key part in its diet for its descendants. But we do know that they weren't above snacking on terrestrial animals. From embedded teeth and stomach contents, we know that at least its relatives ate young hadrosaurs and pterosaurs. Spinosaurus had well-developed front limbs. The uses of these limbs can range in explanations. A reasonable explanation would be to grab fish. That would allow them to hold fish that they've already caught, being a good way to hold multiple fish to eat for later. They could also use them to swipe fish up onto land. Another useful way could be for defense, as these animals lived with Carcharodontosaurus, a large Carcharodontosaurid that could do some massive damage to literally anything. Carcharodontosaurus is a very dangerous creature, and Spinosaurus would need to have some way to fight back. These claws easily fit that function, as well as the earlier function mentioned. Next thing to understand is what led to its extinction. Many people think that it went extinct from the asteroid, but it went extinct due to something that should feel all familiar to us in our modern day. Near the end of the Cretaceous, the planet heated up to a hotter temperature than the rest of the period. This caused sea levels to rise, which destroyed the swampy environment that Spinosaurus lived in. The biggest impact this had was the disruption of food, as the environment was no longer sustainable to the fish that lived there. There was a potential disruption on food on land too, which could have placed the Carchars in a dangerous situation, forcing them to conflict with Spinosaurus more often, which could have been another, albeit smaller, contributor to their extinction. Obviously, the flooding would have also caused salt water to flow into freshwater sources, causing these animals to lose their water source, which is a very bad thing to lose if you want to stay an alive thing. With all of this in mind, what is a reasonable way for Spinosaurus to evolve? Well, the first way is to get smaller. Smaller animals tend to be easier to adapt to cataclysm. Generally, being small is a pretty good thing. Another thing is to expand on the consumption and hunting of land animals. Animals with multiple ways to get food tend to do better. This would also add to my currently short list of terrifying things to encounter in the woods at 3 a.m., although this one's terrifying because it's deadly. But what adaptations would be good for hunting on land without sacrificing any fishing ability? A good one would be bigger arms. So the Spinosaurus had short legs, which is good for swimming, but not good for chasing animals on land or springing up from the bushes for an ambush. Larger arms would be good for this, as they could be used as front legs. This would also make the animal much faster, as it has more points of contact on the ground for pushing off. If we kept their claws in inward-facing palms, then they'd still be just as effective for swimming, fishing, or slashing at land animals. This isn't an unlikely body plan, as we've seen success in animals such as ground sloths, or more specifically for this example, bears. This animal would be a lot like bears, as bears are a very good general body plan, especially for an animal that would eat both land animals and fish. Generalists and smaller animals tend to do good in times of crisis. A smaller, more terrestrial Spinosaurus could survive better, pass on its genes, and over time we get more terrestrial, smaller Spinosaurids. What about the sail, though? This is a very strange adaptation that we still don't know what its purpose was. Several explanations have been proposed, such as sexual display, navigational aid, a way to remove excess heat, all of the above, etc. Without a living Spinosaurus, we may never know the true reason. We do need to figure out if it would stay on a descendant. Well, it's very difficult to get rid of traits such as that, but a large sail could prove as a hindrance to our smaller Spinosaurid here. Generally, for a smaller, more confrontational animal, a sail could prove to be a weakness in combat, as it could be used by an aggressor to grapple the animal and move it to a vulnerable position. This isn't a weakness on an animal such as Spinosaurus, as with its larger size, not much can get to that sail to grab it. And even if an animal does grab it, it puts them in a position where Spinosaurus' arms could deliver a potentially lethal blow to the animal's underside. This doesn't work with our animal here, as its arms, also being legs, would cause it to not be able to move them to the extent that Spinosaurus could. The sail could also get in the way of pursuing animals in a confined space. The sail would likely stay, but it would be much smaller. With all of this in mind, meet Egyptosarcodryptus, name meaning Egyptian flesh terror. It reaches 26 feet in length and can weigh up to 1.3 tons. The creature lives and hunts near and in the water. It consists primarily of fish, but it is made up of around 30% land creatures. As this is an active predator, being a descendant of Spinosaurus, these creatures retain the iconic spine, although vastly diminished. This creature lives in the islands of Europe and Africa, able to swim to islands and conquer the scattered lands of Europe. In terms of danger and competition for this animal, there's not really much. Generally, it has a monopoly on its niche. Sure, if any reached Madagascar, then they'd have to deal with Majungasaurus and the sorts, but generally, they'll never get there. There is just one dangerous animal to these creatures, Hatzegopteryx. Hatzegopteryx is the largest animal to ever fly, and unlike the comparatively lightweight Quetzalcoatlus, Hatzegopteryx was a brawler. This is bad for Egyptosarcodryptus, as while it may be heavier, it's certainly not stronger. Hatzegopteryx will often bully Egyptosarcodryptus off of its kills. Causing lack of food, this generally makes it so that populations of Egyptosarcodryptus are low in places where populations of Hatzegopteryx are high. There is one other species that poses a threat to Egyptosarcodryptus, another descendant of Spinosaurus. I got thinking halfway through writing this, what if Spinosaurus was an ambush predator that looked really weird with really big arms? So naturally, as making stuff like that is my hobby, I made it. Despite how much weirder this one is, I don't think that it needs much of an initial explanation. Meet Tarbobrachiosuchus, name meaning alarming arm crocodile. As you can see, those arms are rather alarming. Not only probably being the largest by proportion of any animal, but with a giant claw bigger than your arm, they reach 24 feet long and 1.4 tons. As strange as this creature is, it's not much stranger than Spinosaurus already was, or the platypus today, or anything in the Triassic period, so this creature is shockingly possible. This creature has many adaptations for waiting for something to walk by, such as pressure sensors in its snout. Its snout is also generally much broader than its ancestors, giving it a high bite force for dispatching prey and much more grip to keep prey still. Its green, brown, and sandy scales are good for camouflaging at the bottom of rivers. Their sail helps with that, looking like an old log. This will trick their prey into thinking that the log would obstruct any room for any ambush predators, when the log is the predator. Tarbobrachiosuchus has no predators. It has a much smaller range than Egyptosarcodryptus, only living in Africa. This, along with its lifestyle, has allowed it to stay safe from animals such as Hatzegopteryx. This has caused them to live in high numbers. This has also resulted in much competition and aggression towards each other. These aren't social animals, and they tend to dislike any other members of their species occupying the same area of a river. Unlike Egyptosarcodryptus, who stick together after mating to take care of their offspring. Tarbobrachiosuchus bury their eggs like a turtle, and then get out of each other alive forever. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that the female cannibalizes the male to help in the egg building process. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you enjoyed my creatures and the video in general. If you did do the previous thing, then consider subscribing and liking this video. See you next time!